today. Today I'm going to be discussing chapter 5 of Spring, and Ulrich will be navigating my session.
Hello everyone, my name is Ulrich and I'll be navigating Tom's session.
Cool. So securing Spring is chapter 5. So what we cover in this chapter is auto configuring Spring security, defining custom user storage, customizing login page as well as registration page, securing against CSRF attacks, knowing your user. Cool, so let's see how the application works so far in the chapter. So now we have a registration page. As you can see, I can go ahead and register an account. So yeah, I can go register an account. And it takes me to the login page immediately after I register. And then I can put the username and the password, and then I can log in. Now I'm logged in as a user. Now to ensure that the user exists in the database after registration, go to my H2 console where I'll end up on the interface where I can interact with my database. So now I can go select the specific user that I want to see that registered. So I can go say select users, and you can see here there is the user's details, ID, city, full name. Now if you notice, the password has been encrypted, so I'm also going to show how that worked. We use bcrypt for that, to encrypt the password to keep it safe from attacks, and all the user's details are there. So yeah, let's see how that works in the code. So yeah, firstly, how the application works so far is that user just you can run the application with Taco Cloud application, then the application runs. Straight after that, we've created a security config folder file, which is this here. This basically is what it essentially does is it's gonna basically check if a user's logged in, if they have the correct role, if they're allowed to access this URL. So it's just gonna go through a security process that checks if the user is authorized to do specific things on the application, right? So it also does things like encrypting the user's password and stuff like that. So it's for security purposes. So let's go through that. So firstly, all these imports that I've made, and you can see bcrypt password encoder as well. So the name of the class is security config. Here I have this method over here, password encoder, and within it it's going to use bcrypt password encoder object to encode the user's password after registration. So that's what that does. Here it's telling Spring Security how to load users from the database. So do that using user detail service method, and as you can see, we use find username, which is the user's name, from the user repo, and save it to this variable, and then it checks if the user exists in the database, and if the user doesn't, then throws this error. If the user does exist, then yeah. So here we have this filter chain method, which is the main security configuration. So this is basically what's going to check, right? Which pages require login, right? So that's the design page, the orders page. Then it's going to say check if what's this? Oh yeah, it sets the URL endpoint for the login page, the URL endpoint for the logout page. So what happens after the user logs out? It redirects to the home page. Here it's allowing H2 console to work. So does that by declaring CSRF, and here you can see the endpoint for the H2 console, then this is allowing H2 console frames. So that's basically what security configuration does. Simple terms. So in other terms, we can say that basically what it's doing is it's just telling Spring Security how your app should handle logins, logouts, and which pages require a user to be logged in. So it's for security purposes. So yeah. Then I have basically registration as well. So when the user visits a registration page, this is the endpoint that gets hit, and so how that works essentially is in the registration controller over here. What we've added is this get request register form, which initially returns the registration page. This registration page is defined here in the registration HTML, which is the single page application that allows a user to register. You can see the username, input, password, all the way to phone number and submit. So going back to the registration controller, what happens is when a user submits a registration, post request happens and this process registration method runs. And initially what it's going to do is it's going to use this save method from our user repository, right? It's going to use that save method to save the user's password or the user's details to user repo, and that gets saved here essentially. So that's how it saves the user's details with a post request. So it's just handling the submission. So that's what the registration controller initially is doing. So yeah, basically with the security filter chain, it's like I said, checking if the user's logged in and do they have a role as a user. If not, it redirects them to the login page. So when the user is registered, they immediately end up on the login page, which is so as I explained over here, when the user registers, it redirects them to the login page, and this is the login page over here. So that's just gonna take in the username and the password, and then we submit, and then now the user's logged in. So now that the user's logged in, what happens is the user has permission to perform specific tasks in the application because of security configurations. So we can basically design a taco, create an order and all of that, and all the repositories interact with the database in terms of that, and that is allowed because of the security config. Now when a user registers and creates a password, what encrypts the password is this method here, password encoder. Using bcrypt password encoder, that's what encrypts the password or hashes the password. And as I explained, filter chain is just the main security configuration that checks the custom login page, which pages require login, what happens after logging out, which redirects to the home page, allowing H2 console to work, and so on. So yeah, that is essentially how that works essentially. Then we have a registration form, which basically represents the registration form. So the data, that is the structure of our data for the registration form. So we can see here all these fields from username all the way to phone. And we have two user method. This is gonna convert the form into a user entity. So it encodes the password before saving it. So when a user creates a password, it uses password encoder, encode password to encode the password. This method that is called is obviously from security config, which is password encoder over here. which hashes the password. So that's what this toUser method does. So it's just converting this form into a user entity. And yeah, that's basically how the application works in chapter 5.